and welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather, coming at you from the 3 darkest days of the year. Or, if you're in the southern hemisphere, the 3 brightest days of the year. Here's the last 24 hours of the closest star, a residual feature of the Smash News Network least busted name in news. By the way, thanks for tuning in and stargazing with us as I wear the brightest clothes on the darkest days. We'll get to it. We've also seen a large earthquake near Ferndale, California at a 6.4 magnitude. Let's subtract the 335 angstroms. Actually, let's subtract the 171 angstroms and show just 335. There you go. Sunspots have been largely stable here over the past 24 hours. And by the way, if you want to support the channel, become a member of the Smash Team at smashamash.com/Smash Team. We created our own website back in 2019 because of pathetic censorship on Facebook. We were a little bit ahead of the curve, as I've been complaining about big tech censorship since about 2016. So join us over at smashamash.com/Smash Team if you don't trust your YouTube feed to actually show you when your latest videos will come up. We don't either. It's part of the reason why we post our major releases all on the Smash Team site. Thanks to our gold and silver Smash Team members especially, there's also a bronze membership level. We also do send out email alerts typically if there are major disasters happening. So let's see what's going on with volcanoes against smashomash.com/Smash Team. Krakatoa continues to erupt. And what do we have here? Eruptive activity continues at the volcano as evidenced by visual observation, satellite imagery, thermal signals, and seismic activity reported at the Volcano Observatory. The new cone of Anak Krakatoa is slowly growing and filling the landslide crater left by the 2018 collapse. So ongoing activity there at Krakatoa. Let's get some footage. Got some footage here. There's some Krakatoa eruption happening there. Exciting stuff. Some new geography being created there at the base of Krakatoa. Continuing on, Semeru is also exploding. Flight level 140. Popocatépetl exploding, flight level 210, as volcanian activity continues. A spectacular eruption at 6:39 local time occurred this morning. Fuego also exploding, flight level 160. I believe that's an uptick at the Guatemalan volcano. Sangay in Ecuador exploding, flight level 210. That's a 21,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. Revenador exploding, flight level 160. Cotopaxi exploding, flight level 230. Sabancaya exploding, flight level 240. And Villarrica in central Chile exploding. Please do not pole vault the caldera. Visible nighttime glow and near constant emissions of gas and steam indicate rise of magma within the volcano's conduit. So check it out. We've got some seismic activity here. That's your 90-day bar graph, and this is going to be some news. A 6.4 very close to Ferndale, California. Just barely off the coast there in some shallow water. South of Eureka, California. A 6.9 magnitude quake happened at 10:34 Universal Time this morning. And if you're wondering if it produced any tsunamis, the answer is not so far. Here's the readout from tsunami.gov. No apparent tsunamis here. No tsunami watches, advisories, or threats at the moment. Not expected to produce a tsunami. And let's scroll up the list and see what else happened. It's been pretty calm, seismically speaking, over the past 24 hours. There was a 5.0 at Chile. So just scrolling up the list here. There was a quake in the South Pacific there, southeast of Easter Island also. The Leeward Islands had a 5.1. That's the western Bahamas there, the western Caribbean. The Western Caribbean, I should say, not the Bahamas. Again, that 6.4 magnitude quake came in at 10:34 Universal Time. There it is on the map. We can expect continued aftershocks there. Let's hope it's not a foreshock to a larger quake, although keep in mind it could be a foreshock. So stay prepared to be an asset, not a liability in the event of a disaster. So here is the closest star. Once again, the last 24 hours here, 304 plus 193 angstroms. Just sweet imagery there from SDO. There were some coronal mass ejections that we'll be covering later in the video as well. Lots of filaments on the Earth-facing side of the solar disk. We've got some coronal holes as well, which we are expecting to see some geomagnetic unrest or possibly geomagnetic storms from. We'll get to it here momentarily. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux has dropped down to 152 solar flux units. There's the one-year chart to put that in context. The black line is the radio flux. The red line is the sunspot number. Feel free to pause the video to further analyze that. There's the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard. NOAA is forecasting geomagnetic unrest right around the solstice. So tomorrow is the solstice. That's why it is the darkest 3 days of the year for the Northern Hemisphere. It's also the brightest 3 days of the year for the South. Coronal hole high-speed stream expected to cause some geomagnetic unrest conditions by NOAA tomorrow. It'll be getting close to geomagnetic storm, and here are the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. It's our Geospace Magnetosphere movie depicting magnetohydrodynamic pressure. The units are nanopascals. And if you want to read more about the space weather modeling framework from which this data is derived, click on the Details tab right down here. And you can download the software used for the space weather modeling framework. Here are the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. We did see an additional CME impact yesterday. Also, we'll get to that too. This is depicting nanotesla magnetic flux density. The last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. It's the final full day of autumn in the Northern Hemisphere. Planetary K index currently at 1.33. It's a KP 1.33 situation, which is quite geomagnetically calm. And let's move to the real-time solar wind. So once again, there was a small CME impact right here. It's pretty minor. There was an increase in the plasma temperature, an increase in the plasma speed, and a minor perturbation there in the plasma density. Very minor, as we didn't even see any sort of a shift with the magnetic field particularly, or the phi angle. But those other three are enough of an indication that that was a legit coronal mass ejection impact. Again, it was quite minor. The speed was about 523 kilometers per second there just for a moment. The density only made it up to 7.04 protons per cubic centimeter. Current conditions are 14 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density and 371 kilometers per second for the solar wind speed. Keep in mind that's measured at Lagrangian point 1, about 1 million miles in between Earth and Sun. Next, magnetic data. There are your GOES magnetometers for the past 3 days. We can expect to see this become a little bit more all over the place as the latest coronal hole high-speed stream arrives. And let's take a look at the heliospheric current sheet. So we don't see a South Pole current sheet coming through yet. Let's just bring up the latest image just to make sure. No South Pole current sheet here at the moment. Is it an indication that that sunspot group in the northeastern limb is going to fade? Will we see additional sunspot content in the southeast? Or perhaps will both occur at the moment? Earth lies in a North Pole current sheet depicted here in green. And let's move on to our line of sight field plot. So there's our line of sight solar field plot. North solar polar field in green, south solar polar field in red, which brings us to coronal holes. Coronal holes are a very important feature of solar polar field reversal processes, which are a very important feature of solar sunspot cycles. Perhaps even more important than the sunspot count itself. And we're seeing North Pole-oriented coronal holes in the northeast and South Pole-oriented coronal holes in the southwest. Let's take a look at it from the SDO's perspective. Here's 211 angstroms. So this is South Pole, and these are all North Pole. So the solar polar field reversal process still well behind schedule, I guess you could say. It's there's a lot of solar activity to come, folks. And thanks for leaving a comment, Tinman1057. Good morning to you as well. Let's move on to remind our viewers to press like, subscribe, share, etc. Check our playlist. Tell your friends and foes. Press the comment button if you're new to the channel. Leave us a comment and tell us how you found us. Since the hashtag system and search features are utterly broken on social media sites, we're surprised that you found the channel. So congratulations that you have. The censorship is so pathetic on certain big tech sites that we're sometimes unable to find our own content. So press that share button if you're an influencer. Drop us a line. We'll be more than happy to appear on your channel and talk about things like the Neo-Renaissance, space weather, the 12 days of Smashmas, and lots more. Again, visit our playlists. As we're paid just this side of nothing to put out the content, perhaps support the channel with some merch. Give Smash staff a raise by clicking the links below the video. In the description, you'll find a link to the Redbubble shop. So drop by over there, see what's going on. Our bestseller has recently been dethroned by Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera. And today's featured product is Forgive, Remember, and Hold Accountable. Of course, not everything that we say on the merch is controversial. I'm not sure if it's controversial or not to forgive, remember, and hold accountable, but forgive and forget is so 2019, right? Just like going to a physical doctor's office. Who's going to go to a physical doctor's office? What, are you crazy? What, do you want me to wear a mask and go to the doctor? That's just insanity. But in any case, we do expect accountability to come. It always does. So in the meantime, forgive, remember, and hold accountable. It's up to you to make Earth not suck again. Once again, visit the links below the video. You'll also find a link to our Hemp Lucid shop. That is our personal Hemp Lucid link. You can also use the promo code SMASHOMASH10 to save some cash on your checkout. Perhaps pick up some last-minute gifts. Not sure if you can get them in time, but might as well try. Let's move to sunspots. Likelihood of large solar flares remains very high. We've got some large setting sunspot groups in the southwest. And we've got some magnetically complex groups in the northeast. Indeed, as we forecasted yesterday, we do have a name for sunspot 3171, the trailing umbral group behind 3169. Let's take a look at those areas there in some additional detail from SDO. So here's SDO magnetogram plus 193 angstroms. Great view of those angry-looking coronal holes. Those coronal holes are they're just mad. Check it out. Oh my God. They're just coronal holes. Let's switch to SDO continuum. There's SDO continuum. Again, most of these sunspot groups have been largely stable for the past 24 hours. Let's drop with the 193 angstroms. Sunspot 3169 and sunspot 3171 is quite a colossal string of sunspots there. And actually a new sunspot group forming right in here. So some new sunspots to be named there, as solar activity is not dropping off a cliff by any stretch of the imagination. For all those folks out there praying for zero sunspots, sorry. You've painted yourself into a corner. Just come out of the corner. Or wait for the paint to dry, then come out of the corner. We won't mind. It is not a grand solar minimum. Next, looking at energetic particles here. The ghost proton flux largely flatlined. We haven't seen a proton event in quite a while. Sunspots have been underperforming with solar flaring. We have had some flares here. Nothing even in the M-class range for the past 3 days. Of course, we've seen a big ramp down here from this extremely active 3-day period back on the 14th through the 17th. At the moment here, only C-class intensifications and a C-class background level of solar X-ray flux. Here is the 131 angstroms wavelength from SDO. We will add 94 angstroms. Now showing 131 plus 94. And then we'll subtract 131 and show just 94. Great imagery there of the latest flaring activity. Several different potential spots there to see major solar flares in the coming days. The darkest days of the entire year. Next, a star chart. We've got a crescent moon up there in the constellation Libra. Let's do a solar system forecast here. First, a countdown, as we're only 1 day and 10 hours from the December solstice. That is the point where the sun gets the lowest in the sky for the northern hemisphere or the highest in the sky for the southern hemisphere, as summer approaches for the south and winter approaches for the north. Here's a solar system forecast. This is where things are now as Earth is moving around to the lonely side of the star there, the one with no gas giants. Let's advance this 1 week. We will have a crescent waxing moon by December 27th. And let's look at some coronagraphs. So we have seen additional CMEs here in the last 24. That is yesterday's 86 frames. Are they earthly directed? We'll give you more information about that here in just a moment. Here are today's 25 frames. Looks like a CME happening as we make the video once again. So let's take a look at the viewpoint from stereo A, which is located at this gravitational equilibrium point known as Lagrangian point 5. And the Soho-Lascaux C3 located here at Lagrangian point 1. Also, viewers, leave us a comment if you think we need a new stereo BX at Lagrange 4. Of course, stereo B's imagery, stereo B is not producing any more imagery because it was damaged in 2015. So what we really need is a new stereo B. We need stereo BX because we want to see an X-ray sensor out there at Lagrangian point 4 so that we can prove that solar flares are anisotropic. Anyway, here are the views from stereo A at Lagrange 5, which is right there, and Soho-Lascaux C3 located at Lagrange 1 right there. And this will show you that indeed that CME you're seeing right here is not earthly directed. You'll see it's north of the Earth line right there. Great imagery there from stereo A of that CME. Let me bring this back. Perfect example of a CME that will miss to the west. Earth would be off in this line from the perspective of stereo A. So that is off to the north and indeed the west, as you can see by looking at both of those coronagraphs. And don't worry, we've got additional imagery of that for you. Here's the last 24. Zoomed way out. Great CME imagery there. And we'll zoom in a little bit closer. Great little light show coming from the northwestern limb. And here's one more close-up, which brings us to our filaments section. So I would say once again, name that filament. Name that fraud. Name that fraud. Oh, big tech? I'm sorry. Has big tech been misleading investors? So once again, I guess I'll say name those filaments because we've got dozens of filaments here. Look at this huge one up in the North Solar Polar region. This one, huge filament down here. These filaments need names, and we've been naming them after living people. Likelihood of additional coronal mass ejections remains at nearly 100%. Remember, folks, we don't need sunspots or solar flares to see coronal mass ejections. That plasma can go blasting out into space with basically no warning. And yeah, look at all those filaments, all those dark absorption features. Those are huge plasma filaments suspended by magnetic fields in between Earth and Sun, defying gravity and being propped up by magnetism. So let's head to Twitter once again. Let's bring up the latest image. There's the last image. And once again, we'll say on Twitter, this time we'll do a hashtag, even though the hashtag system is utterly broken. Name that filament. If you don't have a Twitter account, get one. And if you've unplugged from social media, we absolutely understand why. Probably because of, there are obvious reasons why to unplug from the pathetic, putrid censorship of big tech platforms. They are truly pathetic organizations, probably the evilest companies in the known history of mankind. Here's the last couple of hours of data from the GOES 16 SUVI, and we're seeing some flaring activity here, some flaring from here, some flaring from here, and some flaring from here. So perhaps could be an interesting day indeed. On the closest star, we'll be streaming it on the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/smashomash. Here's the past 24 hours from SDO 171 angstroms, the house favorite wavelength. Just splentacular imagery there. And let's move to our bonus features segment. We don't want the video to be too long. We do want it to be chock full of facts. So at the moment, charging hazards are non-existent here. So no charging hazards for satellites. If you want to follow that stuff yourself, it's on the satellites community dashboard. The GOES electron flux here remaining at quite low levels, and we're expecting even lower levels. Check it out. Here's the forecast from NOAA. Expecting even lower levels of electron flux here as a coronal hole high-speed stream arrives. I would tend to agree with that forecast. There's the one-year chart to put it in context. That's from solon.info. Let's take a look at the F layer of the ionosphere, which has been showing us the weirdest anomaly we've possibly ever covered on the channel. The F layer is located at about 300 kilometers of altitude. Here is the vibrational frequency of that portion of the thermosphere. And once again, we would direct your attention to this area right up here, since the South Atlantic anomaly, which used to be about here, has moved way down here. So maybe 1,500 miles of motion there of the South Atlantic anomaly, now the South Pacific anomaly. Apparently it's gone unnoticed by most of the noobs on the internet, probably because they don't really do space weather. They just grift. But in any case, that's what's going on. And that's, shall we say, interesting? Not exactly sure how that can even be, but it's even more obvious on the anomalygram. You'll see right here, the South Atlantic anomaly is now in the South Pacific. It's no longer over the South American continent. And I'm not frightened by this. However, these are facts. Right there, you can clearly see it's right there. Clearly the weakest spot in Earth's magnetosphere. You can see the huge variation between low and high frequency anomaly. This data depicts anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. The anomaly doesn't lie, and neither does the data. However, lots of grifter hacks on YouTube certainly do lie and are generally uneducated. If you're telling me the universe is electric and you haven't taken physics too, you should STFU and GTFO. Here's the latest image. That's 11:15 universal time ionogram. There's 11:15 universal time anomalygram. Some low-frequency anomalies there in the South Atlantic and South Pacific. Continuing on to total electron content, we've seen some major anomalies in here, and we can expect these to continue for the next coming days. The total electron content shows the GPS satellites down to your handset's worth of free electrons. There they are on the Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology map. And you can see lots of anomalies here happening on that still map. Let's animate it. There's the animated map. And check out the massive Total electron content anomalies over places like the North Atlantic, Greenland, North America. We'll let it play through a second time. That is the total electron content. It's literally a count of the free electrons between the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt and your handset to an altitude of about 12,500 miles. You can expect this to be even more anomalous in the coming days with the coronal hole high-speed stream. Next, our latest intensitygram and latest magnetogram. Again, we've got some quite magnetically complex sunspots here. And I could have sworn we had a new group right here. Maybe not. I do see some tiny umbrae there, so there may be a region forming. It's something to keep an eye on throughout the day. And when I say eye on, well, the pun is intentional. But that's what's going on. We are seeing some flaring. Some of these groups are quite magnetically complex. And before we get to the meteorology segment, I would remind our viewers to click our links, help us out with clicks. Head to smashamash.com if you've never seen it before, and welcome to the Neo Renaissance. I wear the brightest clothes of the year on the darkest days, so that's what's going on here. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. Welcome to the Neo Renaissance. As we cite facts and we pack our videos chock full of them, it's apparently very unfashionable to do so. So we'll take it. Again, please support the channel with clicks. You can find links to SureMed there. It's not insurance, it's an association. Links to Hemp Lucid, links to the YouTube channel, the Twitter page, and so on. And let's move to the temperature map of the planet, because temperature is going to be the story here, especially in the U.S. in the next days. And you can see some slightly chilly temperatures here, also already reaching down to places like Lubbock. You can see the Arctic air here filtering its way down toward the Mississippi Valley there. Again, temperature will be the story. We can actually advance this too if you like. There's some very cold temperatures making their way down into the U.S. And we'll show you some forecasts about that here in just a moment. First, we'll look at winds. So these are the surface winds of the eastern world. A strong low has developed in the southern Indian Ocean. Here are the jet streams of the east. Here are the jet streams of the west. Surface winds of the west looking like this. We've got an offshore wind on the eastern U.S. Here are the surface winds of the central world. And these are the jet streams. Probably the best feature if you want to forecast global weather patterns. And let's take a look at the clouds and fog over the Americas. This is what's going on. It's 3.9 nanometer radiation as the sun rises over the Atlantic. Again, we are approaching the darkest day of the year. In other words, it's the day when this line is the most steeply slanted. Well, that's tomorrow. Anyway, you get the basic idea. Let's take a moment to take a look at water vapor here for once. Showing you a little bit of how the sausage is made here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. This is the water vapor map for the Western world. Clear skies over most of Texas at the moment. So here is our weather.gov map, and you can see lots of cold weather type alerts there on the weather.gov site. There is the key. If your county is lit, click your county. We've got winter storm warnings continuing at Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea. Lots of freeze warnings and wind chills and so on. Weather.gov is where it's located. So let's do a forecast here for the jet stream. This is the 250 millibar winds, and you can see that jet stream dipping way down. It is a polar express. Those high-speed jet winds are going to make it all the way down to Alabama and Mississippi there, driving cold central Canadian air all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. That's your GFS 72-hour jet stream forecast. And let's take a look at some temperature forecasts. There is temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. Texas expecting to make it all the way down to the single digits. Texas stovepipe expecting it to get all the way down to 4 degrees Fahrenheit for the Texas stovepipe. Them be some cold temperatures. We hope their energy situation is squared away. So here's the temperature anomaly forecast, and look at that cold air blasting through. It'll be abnormally warm in the mid-Atlantic states there, and really, really cold all the way down into Mexico, into the Gulf of Mexico. Those temperatures are like 20 degrees Celsius below normal there. That is your temperature anomaly forecast based on the GFS model in degrees Celsius. And let's continue to take a look at snow. So this is the European forecast for snow for the next 3 days. Let's just advance this. So this is where things are now. That's the new snow for the next 12 hours. There's new snow for the next 24 hours. And there's new snow for the next 3 days. So quite a bit of additional snow there coming, at least according to the Euro model. We didn't even show the GFS model today because there's just too much information to cover. We had a hell of a lightning storm in the Gulf of Mexico here. New Orleans saw some of it. And let's take a look at a real-time lightning map to see what's going on in terms of active cells now. We do indeed still see some very active cells in the Gulf of Mexico. No terrestrial strikes in the U.S. here at the moment. We'll zoom out to show you the full world view from lightningmaps.org. And continue on to our U.S. Doppler radar. So that's what's going in terms of vertical motion of water droplets and snowflakes, indeed, in some places like around the Great Lakes and south of them. Let's focus on the lower 48. It's where the action's happening. And that snow making its way to the east there, slowly around the Great Lakes region. Here is your shortwave radiation map showing clouds and fog. Rapid cloud nucleation in the Gulf. And there you can see a huge pressure gradient forming there as we've got this high pressure system providing a little bit of impulse to the east and causing a massive pressure gradient there. As moisture makes its way from California toward the Rockies. So here's the recap. It's time to close this thing out. That's U.S. Doppler radar, ground-based radar systems showing vertical motion of water droplets. There is clouds and fog, 3.9 nanometer radiation satellite. And there is water vapor. We sincerely hope that you enjoyed the content here at the Smash News Network, Least Busted Name in News. We hope you enjoy the 3 darkest days of the year. Congratulations on surviving so far. May that solar wind be at your back. And may that centralization be dead where it belongs. With respect to zombie companies. Opinions expressed in this video are not necessarily the opinions of Smash News Network, Least Busted Name in News.